ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 2 of the series What If Izuku Was Trained to Be an Ultimate Hero by Scientists. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Once he had left the money with Yoshio, Izuku left them. He hovered around for a little while longer out of sight to make sure they didn't steal the money meant for everyone in the poorer section of the city, and also to watch the police investigate the apartment. He was happy to see them begin to work on how to distribute all the money and then start to divide bills into large envelopes. Sano left soon after they started, and Izuku made sure she got home safe from a distance. He only left when he heard loud flapping wings and turned to see a dragon in the sky headed to the apartment. He didn't want to be seen, so he left. He wanted to do some more research on many things he learned by speaking to Sano. More specifically, the legend of the quirk boogeyman with many quirks. Maybe this legend was like him, an experiment. With his mind settled, he flew into the dark and then paused when his stomach grumbled. His path diverted from the direction of the library into that restaurant with the agued food. Less than an hour later, Izuku sulked on a rooftop. Apparently, they were closed and open the next day. That's how he learned that stores closed at select times. When he was done pouting, he jumped down onto the sidewalk. He hovered for a split second to cushion the fall and then began to wander the dark city. While he was peckish, he could handle being hungry for a while. He had spent days without food or sleep before, so skipping a meal wouldn't hurt. Plus, Izuku was almost certain that his quirk adapted to sustain his body with fewer resources. Or maybe it was just his mentality. Izuku wasn't too sure. He walked down the sidewalk with the lampposts lighting his path. He looked at stores as he passed, and what they contained inside them. He saw a few groups of people on the sidewalks, mostly congregating around bars. They laughed and pushed each other around, but it was obvious to see them having fun after work. Some walked with unsteady steps, while others leaned on each other for balance, while they sang songs bad enough for Izuku to know the song wasn't supposed to be sung that way. One older man behind a group stumbled near an alleyway. An arm reached out and grabbed him before anyone knew he was missing. Izuku narrowed his eyes at that and walked into the alleyway. No one was there, so he went deeper into the dark. He heard one voice clearly while the other belonged to the inebriated man as slurred words were mumbled out. It was clear the intoxicated man was being robbed. Izuku moved to stop it. He rounded the next corner and grabbed the robber by the shoulder as he pulled him away from his victim. The drunk man slumped against the wall, asleep. Meanwhile, Izuku got a good look at the criminal. He was young, just a bit older than himself. He looked scared and tried to hide it with anger, but Izuku could see the underlying desperation. The young man tried to shake Izuku's hand off his shoulder and bring up the box cutter to threaten him, but was stopped on both fronts. Izuku's other hand slapped the box cutter out of his hand and held the young man still. "Enough, what are you doing?" "What? What does it look like? Now let me go?" The young man tried to escape once again, but cried in pain when the hand tightened on his shoulder. "Why are you robbing him? I can see this was your first time, so why?" Izuku's voice didn't rise, but it demanded to be answered with glowing green eyes shining on the young man. "I don't have any options left. I need the money. Now let me go?" He thrashed once again, but he was held still. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the boy. "You always have options. This is one of the worst ones. To hurt others for your benefit? I don't know why you need money, but find another way than this." He waved his hand to the unconscious drunk. "Or else you will find yourself dead one day." "How? Who would live me for mugging a drunk?" He waved at the man facing down on the dirty alleyway. "I would," Izuku said calmly. The thrashing stopped and the boy stared at him. "What?" He said quietly. "I will not allow this kind of rot to fester in Japan. I will not let innocent people get hurt because of greedy or desperate people like you. If that means I have to end you, then so be it." Izuku let go of the boy and he fell limply to the ground as he stared up at Izuku. "So choose this." He waved to the drunk. "Or find a better way." He motioned to the light down the alleyway. The boy didn't have to think hard to choose as he got up and ran. The last words he heard before leaving the alleyway rang in his head. "Don't let me see you again." Izuku sighed and rubbed his forehead. He hoped the message was driven deep into the boy's head. He would not have another chance. He then looked down at the drunk man, snoring and huffed. He grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and picked him up. He set the man's arm over his shoulder and walked him to the illuminated sidewalk. His hearing picked up a rustling of cloth over him and could tell someone was watching him. Once the man was dropped off, he looked up and stared into the eyes of a masked woman. Her eyes widened slightly at being caught, but jumped down from the roof to stand before Izuku in the alleyway. Izuku could tell she was a hero, most likely an underground hero by his guess. She wore an orange bandana on her head with a gas mask covering her mouth. The filters had yellow smiley faces on them. Her costume was a simple tank top with orange and green striped shorts. The hero looked Izuku up and down. She put a hand on her hip and pointed at him. "Aren't you a bit young to be out so late?" Izuku tilted his head. "Am I?" he asked in curiosity. The eyes narrowed behind the mask, and she shook her head in apparent exasperation due to the young. "You can get in trouble for what you did back there, you know." She jabbed a thumb over her shoulder, deeper into the alleyway. "Trouble? With the law? For what? I did not use any quirk to stop the criminal, nor any unnecessary force." Although his breaking of the law was long past, she didn't have to know that. She scoffed and rolled her eyes. "And the death threats? Don't think I didn't hear that," she said with narrowed eyes. Izuku shrugged. "Will you attempt to arrest me?" Ms. Joke frowned slightly at the easy confidence of the young man's posture. He was completely relaxed under her glance. Too relaxed, as if she wasn't as threat. That sent alarm bells off in her head. She saw him easily handle the would-be mugger with extreme ease. She looked down at the drunk against the alley wall, safe and still asleep. She hummed and thought, "Walk with me." She motioned to the alleyway. Izuku didn't see any harm in it, so he followed her. She hopped onto a dumpster and scaled the wall to reach the roof. Izuku floated up and stood next to her as she peered over the edge to see an empty alleyway. She was startled slightly when she turned and saw him silently watching her. "Quiet as a cat, huh? I know someone just like that." She chuckled to herself and paused when Izuku didn't make any noise. She cleared her throat at the quiet and continued, "Come on." Izuku followed after her, quiet as a cat, as she said. His training showed as his feet never made a noise, nor did his clothes shuffle. She glanced once or twice at him and a few times at his feet when she heard nothing. She furrowed her brows when she didn't hear a thing. They walked for a while until they reached a tall building that overlooked a plaza filled with the life of the night. "Nice, ain't it?" She motioned to the bustling plaza. She squatted down to look around. Izuku took in the nice view and smiled. "It is." They stayed quiet for a bit longer until the hero broke the silence. "You've been trained, haven't you? You move way too quietly to be anything else." Izuku's smile dropped, and he nodded. "All I've ever known. I didn't like it, so I left." She looked up at him at the tone of voice. She could hear more underlying in the words, but she didn't pry just yet. "Sounds rough, but I'm sure it could be worse. Anyhow, what's someone like you wandering the night? I wanted to go to the library, but it was closed." He grumbled, and then his stomach grumbled as well. "And somewhere to eat, but the place I wanted was also closed." He felt a tap on his arm, and he took a proffered snack. "Thank you." She bit into her own wrapped meal bar and nodded. "What did you want to go to the library for? Manga? Sci-fi? Or romance?" She giggled at the end and turned to see his reaction, but put off when he only looked confused at her. "Research, specifications on the quirk boogeyman. I heard from someone that he was a legend. A man with many quirks. Do you know of this legend?" Izuku asked and ate his bar. Her eyebrows shot up at the mention of the terrible legend. "Yes, it's an open secret of sorts. Mostly about him appearing when quirks first came to be. He built up a criminal empire like none other by taking and giving quirks he stole. He disappeared some time ago as far as I know." She shivered at the mere idea of him. Izuku took the information in. He could still be alive. Theoretically, he could have taken any number of quirks to keep himself from aging or dying at all. Was he ever confirmed dead? Or just disappeared? He asked. She shook her head. "Not sure, but I hope he's gone. No way I would want to fight someone who could take a quirk." The two lapsed into silence once again as they watched the crowds below them. Izuku thought about the legend, and Ms. Joke thought about the boy beside her. The hero wanted to know more about this odd boy. She had a feeling there was more to him just with the brief interactions they had. There was a nibbling feeling in the back of her head that the green-haired boy was more dangerous than he seemed. The way he walked without a sound, the way he spoke as if he never had a conversation before, and the way he looked at everything around him like it was new. Even now, his eyes flickered from person to person below them. You seem about the right age to be one of my students. What school do you go to? Ms. Joke asked to probe for more information. Izuku looked down at her with slightly green glowing eyes and tilted his head. He saw her shiver but paid no mind to it. He turned back to the crowds of people. I don't go to school. She raised a brow after getting the shiver that shot through her body when he looked at her in control. You know truancy is a crime. I could take you just for that admission. Izuku fully turned to her after that statement. You seem like you want to, but you're not sure if you can. So instead you ask all these questions to find more information about me. His eyes glowed brighter as he stared at the woman beside her. I am ignorant to many things, but I am not a fool. What is it that you want? He honestly wanted to know. Ms. Joke stared into the toxic green eyes that bore into her and felt her mouth dry behind her mask. Who are you? She finally asked. Izuku tilted his head. Is that all? You are far too well trained to be anyone ordinary. You move quieter than some pros, and I have a gut feeling that there's more. I never ignore my gut. It's never led me astray. She slowly stood up, not moving her eyes off the boy for a second. I am Izuku. He paused and saw the unasked question, so he obliged her. I am trained in many things. Ever since I could remember I was trained. Everything they thought I would need to be the perfect hero. All I ever knew was training and the lessons. He motioned to the bustling crowds below them with an arm. I never knew any of this. It's incredible. He smiled at the peaceful but loud crowds. Ms. Joke wet her lips behind her mask as she stared at the boy. She had a hand behind her touching an emergency beacon just in case. With a push of a button, all the active heroes in the area would come to help. Who are they? Izuku's smile faded as he was reminded of the island and the bald man. I call them white coats. I know now that they were researchers. None of them ever gave me their names, but I knew their faces. For my whole life, they are all the people I interacted with. I didn't know then, but I know what they did was not right. Ms. Joke pushed the button as she felt the vital fluid drain from her face. Hearing the words researchers connected the dots to the sunken island everyone had been talking about. About the secret research facility with dozens of bodies drowned below. You came from that island. She already knew his answer. Yes, he said simply. You finished all those people, drowned them. Yes, I didn't want any of them to live. I didn't want them to restart what they began somewhere else. Do what they did to me to someone else. I only regret one, and I never knew his name. He smiled sadly at the memory of the bald man. The Hero Public Safety Commission created me to become their perfect hero. My guess it was to take over for All Might after he retired, but I never confirmed it when I questioned them. He furrowed his brows but relaxed, and then shrugged. It does not matter now. Ms. Joke felt dread form throughout her body with each admission. She couldn't let him get away. He was far too dangerous to let free at the moment. If he had the power to sink an island and unalive the heads of the HPSC, then he had the power to hurt so many more. She recalled the moment when Izuku set the drunk man down gently, but shook it off. For the moment, he had to be apprehended until the law knew what to do with him. Izuku saw the moment when the hero attacked. She was fast, with no flashy movements or showboating. She moved to end the fight within the first strike, and he smiled at the proper way to be a hero. It didn't matter how fast she moved. He dodged out of the way and grabbed her wrist to pin her. The sudden reversal didn't stop her as she swung her body to knee him in the stomach. He blocked with his other hand and stuttered when a burst of laughter erupted from him. He tried to stop, but recognized it immediately as a quirk. He had fought with worse impairment. Not wasting time, he grabbed her by the collar and shot into the sky where he had control. Her eyes widened as her feet left the rooftop. She turned to Izuku, whose eyes began to tear up as he laughed even harder. He didn't move his eyes off of Ms. Joke as they flew up. Those glowing toxic eyes bore into her until they reached the clouds high above. She cut off her quirk at the unsaid warning. What's your plan now? Finish me? Ms. Joke asked the boy with her life in his hands, literally. Izuku let go of her collar and held her wrist to wipe his face from the tears that cropped up due to the laughter. That was unpleasant but effective. To answer your question, no, I will not unalive you. I do not hurt innocent people, and you are a good hero as far as I can tell. You move to subdue quickly and end the fight instead of looking for glory. As a proper hero should, end the fight before it can begin to avoid any damage. Ms. Joke clung to his hand on her wrist as he spoke. She felt some relief at hearing his answer. She could tell he didn't lie. For what reason did he have to lie? Don't hurt innocents? What about the board of the HPSC? None of them were innocent. They admitted to releasing low-level villains for heroes to subdue to keep the public's opinion positive on the HPSC. I watched them come to the island and watch me train. Watch me like a prize tool, waiting for me to be ready for them. If they did that, then what else did they do that they hid? He shook his head in disgust at the dead board. Then the law should have taken care of it. You are not judge, jury, and executioner. Izuku shook his head. They were the law. They would escape punishment just as easily as those villains escaped prison. Underground heroes knew of the darker side of the hero business, so she had an inkling of what Izuku spoke of, but it was her job to prevent what he did anyways. So what? Are you going to take down every villain you come across? She tried to reason with him. Yes. The quick answer caused her brain to stutter. What? Not every criminal, of course. Those who steal food to survive would not be the same as those who steal because of greed. Just those who will never bring anything good to society, the rot of Japan. He explained calmly. She shook her head and stared into the glowing green eyes. That doesn't make you any better than those villains. She paused and took a breath. You do it because you have the power to? That's not right. Please just come with me and I can get you help. You're right. What the HPSC did to you wasn't right, but this isn't the way. Izuku tilted his head. While I thank you for your compassion, I know what I want to do with my life. They trained me to be a protector of Japan, so I will keep the innocent people of Japan safe by any means necessary. He smiled at her attempt to sway his mind. Even now, she tried to subdue Izuku with words when actions showed to be futile. Now, I'll drop you off at a hospital. They are very easy to find, I've come to find out. Her eyes widened, and then she slumped when Izuku stuck her in the right place to knock her out. He picked her up in a princess carry and flew off. Far below him, dozens of red and blue flashing lights illuminated the previously crowded plaza. He could see a few scattered people uniquely dressed. Heroes, he guessed. It didn't matter as he flew high over them. It didn't take long for Izuku to find a hospital nearby. He landed in front of the entrance. He gently set the good hero down and left just as medical personnel began to make their way to him. Izuku flew high up again and began to think of a plan to begin his purge. Help would be appreciated. After all, he wasn't a god. Maybe if a message were to spread of what he would do, then others would join in his cause. He would have to think about it further. For now, he wanted to see the greener parts of Japan. Even from the distance, the woods looked pretty. Tsukachi rubbed his forehead in the privacy of the empty hospital hallway. His mind was reeling as he processed the words of Emi Fukukado. His hand shook slightly in tremors from various emotions running through his body. From anger at the HPSC who groomed and created a child to become their tool. Fear at hearing how easily Ms. Joke was subdued, and the admission Izuku told her of him killing the head of the HPSC and the whole island he came from. Dread at what would be coming in the future from his words to Ms. Joke. And finally sadness for Izuku, the super soldier boy who never knew the love of a family or the comfort of a home. Sansa Temikawa, his cat-headed partner in all but name, spoke up. Maybe we can talk to him before he does something we won't be able to forgive. He said hopefully. Detective Tsukachi straightened with a sigh. If we can find him, that is. How do you find a super soldier boy new to the outside world who can fly and be trained in who knows what? Temikawa rubbed his ear. If I was him, I would be exploring the world. You heard what she said. He was smiling as the plaza did its own thing. Maybe send officers to more notable locations? Green hair is somewhat distinctive. Nodding along, Tsukachi shrugged. That might work. But keeping him from leaving is another matter. Ryukyu and her in turn are the only ones I can think of that can fly. Hawks is still in a coma due to Izuku, most likely. He recalled his condition the last time he heard of the hero. And Endeavor isn't a long-distance flyer. I'll have the officers to know if they find him to stall him and not engage, Temikawa noted. Tsukachi smiled at his partner and nodded. Thanks, Temikawa. He sighed and began to walk down the hall. Let's hope he doesn't do anything too criminal. Izuku, the genetically engineered boy, giggled as the waters of the ocean lapped at his feet. He had taken off his shoes and socks to walk into the cold morning waters of the beach. He was speechless when he found the picturesque scene of the sun rising on an empty beach. He immediately landed and stared out into the waters as the sun got higher and higher. He enjoyed the cool breeze of the ocean and the sound of lapping water on the beach. Now, his feet sunk into the sand as he played in the waters. He crouched down to let the cold water run through his hands and smiled at the peaceful time. He picked up shells to look at them and then set them down after admiring them. One such shell contained a very irate crab. Izuku smiled as the crab snapped its pincers at the one who disturbed its rest. He set the little creature down where he found it and moved on. At some point, Izuku decided to swim in the cool waters. Not just because it looked nice, but also to experiment with his quirk or quirks. He still didn't know which was true. He leapt into the waves and sank underwater. There wasn't much to see, but the few fish were neat nonetheless. His training included swimming for hours on end in a small pool, but the feeling of the ocean was completely different. He swam lazily at first, just enjoying his time. Then, he tried his quirk to fly. He wondered if he could use his quirk to under the water, and when he was propelled forward like a torpedo. He propelled himself through the waters at high speeds. He didn't know how far he was from the shores, but he was sure he could find it when he surfaced. He angled his body up and broke to the surface into the morning light. He brushed his messy green hair back and looked around. He found the shore and narrowed his eyes. He smiled and then shot himself at full speed towards the beach. The sound barrier shattered, and a wake in the water followed him to shore. He arrived at the place where he discarded his clothes in moments. He came to a stop and the vacuum behind him collapsed, causing the air to shoot in every direction. Sand went everywhere. Izuku was blinded for a moment, but he grinned like a child. He waved his hand to clear the sand in the air, and it finally settled. His clothes were partially buried in sand, but that didn't bother him in the least. He laughed a bit when he noticed that he was completely naked. He wasn't sure when it happened, but his underwear was ripped apart during his play. He shrugged and clothed himself once again before sighing as he caught the faint sound of police sirens in the distance. He already knew they would be looking for him. Admitting his deeds to the hero the day before would put them on his tail. But Izuku didn't care. He didn't want to hide all his life to live freely, so he chose his path. Just as he lifted off the ground, he noticed in the distance a large mass flying in his direction. Most likely it was the dragon from the apartments. He watched the dragon flap its massive wings for a moment before he decided he should leave and avoid trouble. He turned up to leave, but was surprised when there was a young woman in his path. The first thing he noticed about the young woman was that she was pretty. The next thing he noticed was that she was using her quirk to try and contain him. He shook off the hormones in his head and focused on the young hero, trying to stop him. She yelled out in a chipper voice, "Hold on. Don't go anywhere for a moment." Izuku broke out of the waves of energy containing him and shot into the air. He broke the sound barrier again and appeared in front of the young hero. He wasn't going to hurt her. He saw the way she tried to contain instead of attacking, and she had asked nicely. So, he stayed for a moment to see what she said. Nijire was startled by the shockwave of his speed and the sudden appearance in front of her. She readied an attack when she noticed he wasn't doing anything, just floating in the air. "Oh, what are you doing?" she asked. "Nijire. What's he doing?" Ryukyu, her boss, asked through the earpiece. "Hold on. I just asked him that," she responded. She turned to him, who watched her curiously. "I'm waiting, as you asked. What are you doing?" Izuku tilted his head in consideration. "Well, I wasn't expecting you to stop. Most people don't listen to me when I fight them. Unless it's practice, then we have to listen to our opponents just in case they call a pause. Why did you listen? This isn't practice," she said in rapid fire. Izuku shrugged. "I wanted to see what you had to say. I'm supposed to arrest you, but Ryukyu said not to engage in combat and only slow you down. Even now, I don't think I can beat you, and I'm super strong. How'd you move so fast? I was told you were very dangerous, but you don't seem that bad. Then again, my friend looks harmless, but he's just as strong as me." Izuku's eyebrows rose as she kept talking, and he felt a bit overwhelmed at the rapid words. He wasn't trained for this. "I figured you were here to slow me down for Ryukyu, that dragon, I'm guessing." He motioned at the much closer reptile. "Yep. It's really nice of you to stay where you are." She smiled brilliantly. He shook his head. "I don't want to hurt any hero that does their job properly. As I said, I wanted to see what you had to say, but I won't be captured." He paused and searched for the words. "Have a good day," he said politely, then he shot into the sky. Nijire tried to contain him once again when he spoke of leaving, but it was futile as he disappeared with a sonic boom. She looked around, but saw nothing. She groaned and stomped her foot in midair. At least he was nice. She grumbled. Ryukyu arrived at Nijire's side not a few seconds later. She was also turning her massive head around, but she also saw nothing in the clear sky. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. He didn't even fight. He stopped when I said to stop, which was nice of him, but he escaped. Nijire whined. What did he say? Ryukyu gave up on looking and turned to her in turn. What did you two speak of? He wanted to know what I had to say and that he wouldn't hurt me because he thought I was a good hero, no? A hero who did their job properly. That's what he said. Then he left. Ryukyu was quiet for a long moment as she thought about those words. If Nijire wasn't a proper hero as he said, then would he have fought her? That was an interesting piece of information. Tell me what you thought of him? Nijire paused and furrowed her brow as she thought back to the interaction. He was calm the whole time, relaxed. As if I wasn't a threat. High above, Izuku watched the two figures fly away in an unknown direction. He hummed in thought at the interaction. Maybe there were good heroes that made him happy. He was somewhat worried that all heroes were corrupt like the ones he had seen, but it was obvious that he was wrong. He had seen two heroes who were not fit to be heroes, and two who deserved to be heroes. It was becoming more clear that there were good and bad heroes. But with the retirement of the strongest hero would come a wave of criminals that would take the opportunity to cause damage to Japan. That's where he would come in and make sure the rot was managed. Izuku lazily floated away from the shores and went to the thickest parts of the woods to admire the scenery. He flew lower to brush against the canopy of the trees. He smiled as birds flew at his passing and wildlife skittered across the forest grounds. He thought some more about heroes and what else he should do to help Japan, but his mind wandered to the peaceful forest. He landed on the forested ground and began to wander deeper into the woods. He examined each plant with fascination. If he caught any insects wandering, he sat in front of them and watched them crawl along for a while. He smiled as he picked one up and felt its small legs on his hand. When he had enough fun, he gently set the creature back on the leaf he found it on. Izuku was startled by a whining noise in the woods and slowly followed its sound to find a bug with wings sitting on a log making the sound. It was loud as he stood near the creature. He got closer and poked it. The bug stuttered its noise, and then it flew off to find a more peaceful tree trunk. Izuku smiled as it flew away and let it be. As he walked, he picked up neat rocks. Some were very smooth as if something had worn them down for decades. Other rocks were shining when the light hit it at an angle. He wondered how some had gotten to the middle of the wooded area. He could imagine some children playing with their quirks and launching them into the distance. He wondered what else was hidden in the woods. Just as he was going to continue his wandering, his stomach grumbled loudly. He frowned as he recalled the last time he ate, so with a sigh he lifted off the ground and flew off to find a meal. He hoped the restaurant he went to last time was open already. He kept an eye open to anything else flying in the area. He didn't want to get caught off guard again. As he flew, he did see some figures looking around with unique clothes. He wondered how desperately they were looking for him. Did they want to end him? Stop his actions? Or something else? Izuku wasn't entirely sure. Even with the encounter with the young hero didn't tell him too much. She could have been following orders to capture him, or she defied the orders to unalive him and tried to capture him. Either way, he would have to keep an eye on their actions to find out what they intended. He found the place he had eaten last time and landed in a nearby alleyway. He glanced around as he made his way into the food court. Just as he took a step forward, someone grabbed him by the back of his jacket and dragged him back into the alleyway. He jerked away immediately and turned to whoever grabbed him. An older man with a purple jacket, peach scarf, and glasses stood back with his hands raised. His silver hair was combed to the side, and he had a smile that put Izuku on edge. Whoa, easy. Just wanted to chat is all, the man said with a toothpick in the corner of his mouth. Izuku didn't lower his guard as he watched the man. He took everything in like he was taught. He looked for allies of the man, hidden or not. He looked for weapons on the man, but he saw none. He searched for any obvious signs of a quirk, but he saw nothing physical on his body. He prepared to end the threat either way. Hey, look, how about we start with names? I go by Jiren. When the young man didn't respond, he sighed and continued. Well, I'm a man who works with all kinds of people. I can get you information, gear, and even allies, he said with a big smile. I'm just offering my services to someone capable as far as I've seen. What do you mean all kinds of people? Izuku narrowed his eyes at Jiren. He had a feeling he knew already, but he didn't like it. Let's just say I don't discriminate. If someone needs a place to sleep, then I can get it. If someone needs a weapon, then I can get it. Simple as that. He said with a shrug. I've got some people interested in meeting with you. You said you could get me information? He smiled and nodded. That's right, for a price, of course. The payment is flexible. What about villain organizations, gangs, and other groups like them? Jiren winced slightly. Well, I can do some of them. Others are off limits. Premium members, if you catch my drift. Unless you do some favors for me, then I can see what I can do. He said, grinning. Izuku nodded. He made his decision and shot forward with his arm wound up to strike. Jiren's eyes widened just in time to see the arm chop down against his neck. There was a sickening crack and Jiren's neck twisted in a way that shouldn't have been possible. He grabbed him by the head with one hand and then jammed his finger into the side of the man's head. It penetrated his skull and destroyed the brain. He had no qualms with ending a man like Jiren. While on the island, Izuku learned of how villain organizations got some of their supplies to function. Most were stolen, others bought with stolen money, and finally, there were the few who used people like Jiren. Brokers worked with anyone who paid them enough. It didn't matter who or what they dealt with, only the money mattered. Whether it be toxins, weapons, or people, brokers would traffic anything. They were the most used ways to connect villains, and taking them out would cause damage to villain organizations. Once he made sure the broker had no way of surviving his attack, he checked his pockets. He found a lot of money, a few phones, and a bladed weapon. He cleaned his hands and took the money while leaving everything else. He took one of the phones and dialed emergency services so they could collect the body and hopefully use the phones to find more information about who he worked with. Izuku sighed as he thought how useful it would have been if he knew how to use technology. While on the island, he only dealt with paper and pencils, so he was clueless in many of the devices. He left the phone operator trying to speak to anyone who was listening and went to his primary objective, food. He crossed the street and made his way to the restaurant. He eagerly waited in line and looked at the menu once again. It wasn't necessary as he already knew what he wanted. For here, or to go? The cashier asked. Izuku began to say for here, but he caught a conversation. He turned to see two policemen talking into their devices and looking right at him. He frowned slightly and turned to the cashier. To go, please. He took the paper receipt, tossed it in the garbage immediately, and watched the police begin to evacuate the food court out of the corner of his eye as he waited. He had to admire the way everyone left the area without question. It was very organized. It didn't take long before his food was ready. He took the offered bag and left the building. He ignored the police who backed away from him and flew off with his precious package in hand. Subject 1, or Izuku as he calls himself, sat on a high building similar to the one Hawks tried to capture Izuku on the first night. He sat and ate his meal from a plastic bowl. Not knowing what to expect, he was happily surprised to find it very simple to eat away from the restaurant. He enjoyed the meal very much as he ignored the woman in a nice dress and the young woman near her, waiting for him to finish his lunch. It wasn't very long after he sat down on the roof edge that he heard the flapping of wings and the young woman's chatter. He stared at them as he took his first bite of his katsudan. He watched the dragon transform into a woman with fascination, but after she just watched him and talked into a device, he ignored her. He could see the young woman restrain herself from coming over to him and talking about whatever was on her mind at the moment. Currently, his eyes were set on the city skyline and at millions of people in them. He smiled softly at seeing people go to their destinations and enjoyed seeing them smile freely. He wanted to keep that how it was now and forever. Izuku turned from watching people walk far below him and to the woman who was walking closer slowly. He wondered if her quirk was just the ability to transform into a dragon or if she had some other facets of being a dragon. He knew very little about dragons, so he was clueless. She didn't say anything right away, so he put the empty bowl into the bag and closed it for later disposal. You're very young, no older than my intern here. The woman spoke. Izuku tilted his head in curiosity. Am I? I don't have any references, he said with a shrug. The woman pursed her lips and watched him neatly set the bag to the side. How old are you? 15? 16? I was never told that information. Seems useless in their grand picture, which I have to disagree with. If I was too young, no one would take me seriously, but being too old would compare me to the veterans with no time in the field. So, it is true about the HPSC grooming you to become a weapon for them? The woman asked. Izuku looked at the woman. Why would I lie? To validate the reason you finished them. Ryukyu. The young woman finally spoke up in abhorrence at what her mentor just said. Izuku's eyes flickered to the young woman and was again pleased at her reaction. You don't believe they would do such a thing? Ryukyu shook her head. Oh, don't get me wrong. I can believe it, but your actions are criminal. He frowned at that response. You are not surprised by their actions. So, you knew they were willing to do such things. He fully turned to Ryukyu. That's neither here nor there. You will be coming with me. We don't know what to do with you just yet, but you are a threat. Izuku watched her muscles tense. But he had a strong feeling she had no chance of winning against him, and she knew it. Why else would she be talking or buying time? Either she is the kind of person to talk people down like the young woman, or she wants answers while waiting for backup. He sighed and grabbed the bag of trash to dispose of. He stood up from the edge of the roof and began to float. I'd rather not fight any heroes, even if they are suspect in what they say or do, he said with narrowed eyes. I suggest you stand down or else you will be injured, possibly severely. Nijire, Ryukyu shouted as she dashed forward. Nijire leapt up above them and began to use her quirk to force Izuku down onto the roof. Instead of going with the force pushing him down, he stayed where he was. His clothes rippled from Nijire's quirk as he locked eyes with the young woman. Her eyes widened at his ability to resist her quirk so easily. Ryukyu stopped after taking a step. She expected him to fall from the sky, but she was mistaken. Izuku's glowing eyes were visible to the two of them in broad daylight. He turned from Nijire to Ryukyu. I understand why you continue to pursue me, even though you are well aware you can't stop me. And for that, I admire you. He locked eyes with Ryukyu. But I will be leaving, whether you permit it or not. Nijire, get away from him, Ryukyu shouted. She was about to do so, but panicked slightly when she lost sight of Izuku. The sound barrier breaking told her. He was right behind her. Just as she turned, she was grabbed and covered by his body. A wave of intense heat washed over them, most of it blocked by Izuku taking all the fire. Endeavor, stop, Ryukyu shouted in horror at seeing her in turn getting consumed by flames. The number 2 hero snuffed out his stream of fire to see his target only to see him covering Nijire with his body. His shirt and jacket were burned off from the intense heat. Nijire under him was burned slightly, but was still breathing and unconscious. Izuku grabbed her and gently floated down to set her on the roof while staring at the flaming hero. Once Nijire was safely set down, Ryukyu ran to her and turned to check her over. Izuku floated away from the pair and eyed the newest person on the roof. I was told you were dangerous. I see nothing more than a child, Endeavor arrogantly said. Izuku tilted his head as he spoke. You don't care that she was in the crossfire? That you would have finished her if I didn't protect her? He scoffed. She should have been more reactive. She had plenty of time to get out of the way, but she didn't. So long as the threat is dealt with, nothing else matters. Ryukyu snarled at her co-worker. How dare you? I was taught the same. So I will neutralize the threat on this roof. Izuku's eyes blazed green as he shot forward. Endeavor felt the shock of impact on his arm, and then felt immense pain as his arm was shattered. Before he could wash the area in flames, his other arm was broken in the same place as his other. Endeavor reeled back and attempted to shoot off the roof to gain distance, but felt his knee bend in an unnatural direction when he was about to extend it to jump. He screamed in pain and began to expel as much fire in every direction, but he felt one last thing shatter as his jaw turned into powder. His world turned black and he lay unconscious on the roof, never getting another hit on his target. Ryukyu watched the number 2 hero break under Izuku's fists and kicks. Each strike was fluidly transferred into the next without losing any speed. The dominant arm was disabled, then the other, just as Endeavor tried to attack. Finally, his mobility was subdued, followed by a brutal punch to the jaw. She shivered at seeing such skill and power. The only time he was ever hit was when he protected Nijire from the fire blast. Izuku held the limp form of the number 2 hero aloft. He looked at the man with distaste. Vital fluid dripped down from his broken mouth onto the roof. Without much care, he tossed him onto the roof and looked at Ryukyu, who watched him as she stayed by Nijire. As I said before, the innocent are not my target. People like him, Izuku pointed at the broken form of Endeavor, are. People who use their power to hurt people needlessly will be pulled by the root. By his actions, my guess is that wasn't the first time he did not care for collateral damage. If I find he has done so again, I will unalive him. That goes for everyone who is a hero. I will not tolerate such negligence as that or the thrill of glory of having power over others. You wanted information on me, didn't you? That's what I will give you. Who are you to determine life and death? You'll never be a hero. We don't kill. Ryukyu managed to get out. Heroes are trained to subdue villains and criminals to be processed into the law. You are not doing that. Izuku motioned to Endeavor. Seems to me that he had no issue with killing me and her in the crossfire. As for me being a hero, I was trained before I could remember. Every minute of every hour I was trained to be a hero, and I see now that I am outside that the law is corrupt. In only 2 days, I've found that corruption in both heroes and the law releasing repeat villains to be captured again. How many lives can be saved by making sure vile men and women will never draw another breath? A dead villain can never hurt anyone ever again. With that, Izuku flew off. Ryukyu furrowed her brow and thought of what he had said, but put it out of her mind as she focused on the injured people around her. She pulled out her communicator and called for medical assistance for 2. She looked over Nijire once again. Several burns covered her, but nothing that wouldn't heal. The hair would take a while to grow back, but that was inconsequential. Endeavor, on the other hand, was a mess. Both arms were visibly broken, and his knee was bent in the wrong direction. His jaw would need extensive surgery if she had to guess. Izuku flew away from the roof and the police that surrounded the base of the building. He made his way higher into the sky and felt the breeze on his chest. He was reminded that his shirt was burned away by Endeavor, as Ryukyu called him. He frowned slightly and made a note to research the higher-ranked heroes to be more prepared for the future. He thought of where he could get more clothes and remembered the place that sold good food also was nearby a mall. He had caught a glimpse of stores selling clothes. With that, he diverted course. An hour later, Izuku was flying back over the forest with a new shirt and jacket. The store owner seemed to be wary of him when he arrived half naked, but paid it no mind when he handed over the money to buy the clothes. He was just lucky he decided to keep the money he took from the villains in his pants and not higher on his body otherwise. He would need to hunt for a few villains. When he was well out of range of any civilization, Izuku dropped into the trees and began to wander. He has so much left to explore in the new world he never got to see until now. He was able to creep up to a few animals to observe them closer by levitating off the ground to not scare them. He greatly enjoyed seeing the animals graze on the foliage of the brush. It was very relaxing for Izuku just to wander. Bit by bit, the sun began to lower. He took the opportunity to fly above the canopy of the trees to see the sunset. Oranges mixed with red and purple mixed in until it became dark. Slowly, the stars began to shine after hours of watching the sky. All the while, Izuku sat on nothing above the trees. He looked around to find a nice place to rest and found a clearing with a grassy hill in the middle. He brushed some of the foliage on one side and lay down to continue watching the stars. It was when the sun began to shine on his eyes when he woke up. He let out a large yawn and stretched until he felt satisfied. With a happy sigh, he hopped onto his feet and looked around. He placed where the city was and picked a random direction farther into the woods he would explore. As he walked, he observed all kinds of creatures and plants. He was very curious about the fungi he saw, but knew enough not to touch them. However, when he thought about his possible quirk, he wondered if he could gain immunity to certain kinds of fungi or poisons. It was a thought for another day, as he didn't want to train. He trained for his whole life. As he walked, he picked up various things that intrigued him, from smooth rocks that fit in his hand comfortably to abnormally straight sticks. Why did he pick them up? Various reasons, such as they looked uniform, satisfying to look at, and most especially because Izuku was still a boy who liked to pick up neat things. With a pocket full of neat rocks, he flew off to explore more of Japan's wilderness. He played with a mirror-smooth stone in his hands as he watched a large group of children use their quirks to extreme measures. Izuku was high in the sky, sitting crisscrossed, looking far below him at the camp. He didn't know what else to call it, of children. There were a few adults in hero attire similar to a cat, and 2 other adults. One looked like a homeless man with a scarf, and the other had sharp protruding tusks. The latter looked like a hero, and the former acted like a veteran hero. Even with the homeless man's appearance, he watched everything and everyone with intensity. He turned his attention to the children. He supposed they were his age, but he didn't feel like their age. They were all unique in their appearances and actions. From a simple girl with brown hair, and now outward mutations to a large boy with 6 arms webbed together. He watched each one with curiosity. Their quirks were also interesting to watch, especially when a large explosion was loosed into the air. In another place, ice covered a large patch of earth and then melted away slowly. Farther away, some sort of white material was expelled from someone's elbows. Nearby, 2 ate at a prodigious rate while they created things out of nothing and exercised. As he watched, he began to guess their quirks from a distance. A few were easy to guess, others were much more complicated. That has to be some sort of shadow construct. Maybe it's also sentient. With how it moves, it is very possible. He said to himself and motioned with his straightest stick. She's just invisible. Unless she can do more, but not enough information. He tapped his chin with the stick. Tail mutation, unless. Nope, just a tail. And he has adhesive hair in the shape of spheres? He squinted at one short boy and then shrugged. Quirks are very unique and odd. The children took a break, and Izuku switched his focus to the adults. From a glance, he could tell the 4 dressed similarly like cats were on a team of some sort. Why they would choose feline costumes while none of them had any sort of feline-like quirks he would never know. But from his distant examinations, he could tell the 4 were usually a cheerful group who cared about their work. They smiled while watching over the children and pushed their training when they lagged. While some of the children took it in stride, others were less than grateful. Izuku frowned at seeing some of the children snap at the heroes trying to help and train them. He wondered if this was how the bad heroes began. Malicious children who grow up to be dangerous adults with the power to abuse. He shook his head. He would have to wait to judge them. Some plants could take a while to grow properly. Instead, he focused on the nicer-looking children. He wondered if this training camp was some sort of school. He had some vague knowledge about hero schools and wondered if the children below him were such hero prospects. Eraserhead, I've been getting a ping on my quirk. Just out of my range, straight east. Ragdoll said to the disheveled underground hero. Aizawa showed a curse in his mind. It was one thing after another this year, he thought. First was the trials with ended a building collapsing on 4 students. Then, the USJ attack and the grievous injuries to some of his students. He wasn't left unscathed as his missing eye itched. Todoroki's self-destructive refusal to use part of his quirk ended with half of his hand frozen off on live television. Tenya Ida's death at the hands of the man who crippled his brother. Then there is the mess of the midterms. Half the class failed the practical. One mess after another with this year's cursed class. How many? When did you pick it up? He quickly asked as he thought of their planned evacuation should things go bad. Again. Just one, and it's been there all day. A scout, you think? Should we evacuate or send someone to apprehend them? Aizawa considered his options. I'll go, you all stay on guard, and I'll keep in touch with the communicator. If so much as one thing goes wrong, get the children out of here. Ragdoll nodded and Aizawa began to make his way into the woods to the east. While Izuku floated high in the air and tried to carve a stone with his fingernail into the shape of a tree, it wasn't going well. He gave up on carving a tree when the stone cracked in half, and instead focused on the homeless-looking man begin to walk into the woods alone. He wondered what he was doing. Izuku lay parallel to the ground high in the air as he looked down at the homeless-looking man traverse the woods in his direction. He noticed the man, probably a hero, begin to make his way in his direction. He thought nothing of it until he moved to get a better view of the second group of children, and the man changed direction to head his way once again. He moved once more to see if he was truly coming for him, or just a coincidence. For a third time, he headed to where he floated high in the air, or at least under him. Definitely has some sort of tracking quirk to be able to find me. As for why, if he is guarding children, then it would make sense to be aware of all possible threats in the area. As for his intentions if he finds me, well, most heroes have been made aware of me, so not great. Izuku hummed to himself and tapped the stone in the shape of a tree if you squinted hard enough. Same protocol. Observe and then engage if wanted. Maybe ask why they are all here. Still unknown quirk, so watch for that. He nodded to himself and began to lazily do barrel rolls as he continued to work on his sculpture. Far below, Aizawa quietly made his way through the trees. He scanned the area constantly and was in communication with Ragdoll constantly for updates on locations. So far, whoever was near the camp was able to move extremely quickly. He couldn't tell if they knew he was on his way to find them or if it was just a coincidence that they moved that often. Aizawa was on edge as he got closer and closer to the unknown person. He looked at the time, and it was beginning to change from a bright day to a dimming sunset. Be aware, you will come into contact with the unknown shortly. They have not moved since the last position change. A communication device sounded in his ear. Eraserhead quietly responded. Understood. He moved slowly and quietly in the direction of the unknown person. He kept his one eye scanning constantly for threats, or even a sign of passing, but there wasn't a single sound or sign of anything abnormal. His whole body was tense in preparation for moving in case of an ambush, but nothing happened. He looked everywhere, from treetops to feeling the earth's vibrations, or the trees to see if any were hiding someone. You have passed the unknown. Ragdoll's voice sounded in his ear. Izuku froze and turned around. I have not seen anything suspicious. Please confirm where the unknown is. There was a long pause before Ragdoll said quickly. Unknown has moved to be right beside you. Eraserhead snapped his head to the side and scanned the earth, then up in the trees. He stopped when he made eye contact with a young man the age of his students. Contact, young male. Green eyes and hair, confronting. He stopped whispering and spoke loudly to the boy, his whole body tensed to attack or defend. Who are you and why are you here? He tightened his grip on his scarf and readied to activate his quirk. Izuku tilted his head as he watched the hero tense. I'm Izuku, and I'm exploring. He stood on a tree branch looking slightly down at the man. Who are you? A hero, I'm guessing? You are on private property and a secure site. Why have you been watching my class? Class? Like 1A? That hero school? Is this UA? He looked unimpressed at the idea of the famous school being so remote and small. I figured hero schools would have been more sophisticated. Not this place. He motioned to the woods. Izuku furrowed his brows at the boy. He couldn't sense a single sign of dishonesty. Why are you here? He refuses to believe he was simply walking in the woods only to stumble upon the secure site they chose last minute. Izuku shrugged. I already said. I was exploring and saw your class training and watched in curiosity. You didn't answer my question. Is this UA? Izuku pursed his lips before answering. No, this is not UA. He thought of his next move and made his choice. You'll need to come with me. I cannot allow you to leave with the knowledge of where this location is. Izuku tilted his head. Either he didn't recognize Izuku, or he hadn't gotten any news of Izuku's identity. He hummed in thought. He did want to get a closer look at their training, but felt sure that they wouldn't let him roam freely. He didn't like being confined in any way. He shrugged and went with his idea. He would go with the hero, and if they tried to restrain him, then he would just leave. Izuku dropped down from the tree branch and landed with a slight thump. Much quieter than most would manage. I don't. He deftly dodged the white scarf that shot in his direction. I see now, he said with a sigh. Izuku didn't say anything in response, but kept trying to tie Izuku up in his scarf, but was failing to do so. With each step, he dodged the reaching end of the scarf. With fluid movement, he avoided every single attack. Not only was it obvious that Izuku was trained, but trained extensively. Izuku could not tell if it was a quirk or pure skill, but activating his quirk would show him. As he did so, he cursed under his breath as he saw it had no visible effect on the dodging form of Izuku. Not a single reaction at a raised quirk. Izuku paused in his attempt to capture Izuku and stared at him. Who trained you? Izuku smiled wistfully at the image of the man. I don't know his name. I always called him the bald man in my head. He's gone now. He sighed. The hero frowned slightly. This wasn't any regular training, was it? He already knew the answer, but asked anyway. Izuku tilted his head. I'm not sure. I don't have much to compare it to. I never did any of what your class was doing. But I do know I've been training for all my life until recently. Until I left. Izuku had a bad feeling, but had to ask. Left where? Training all his life? Nothing to compare it to? Red flag shot high as he watched the boy carefully. I don't know if it had a name, but it was a research island for the Hero Public Safety Commission. They raised me under there to become their tool and weapon. When this All Might retired or died, I was supposed to take his place. I never confirmed that, but it was my best guess. When I wanted to leave, they didn't let me. So I left anyway. They couldn't stop me. With each word, a cold spike of dread sunk deeper into his chest. He wetted his lips and did his best to keep his voice steady. And what do you think of the outside? Why lie? For what reason? His moments proved the truth. Not once was he grazed by his scarf, and he had ample chance to counterattack. It's incredible. It's so beautiful in so many ways, but also not. Izuku's beaming smile slipped at the end. There are too many people infecting the world with their rot. I've been helping it every chance I get. He had to keep the boy talking and convince him his class and 1B were nothing of consequence. Who is infecting the world with rot? Villains and vile people like the ones who were in charge of the Hero Public Commission safety. Of course, not all villains should be killed. Some need to break the law to feed themselves and their families. They should be punished but not killed. Maybe put them to work while helping their loved ones, but I'm still thinking about that. As for those who hurt others just because they have the power to, they bring nothing to this world but suffering, a rot that will never help anyone. As he continued to speak, his eyes glowed brighter and brighter green, his conviction not wavering in the slightest. Izawa wet his dry mouth. Why? Why do anything? You left a prison to do what? Wreak havoc? Izuku tilted his head. Not wreak havoc. Change needs to happen instead of waiting for more innocent people to get hurt. As for why, he pursed his lips. I have been trained to be a perfect hero all my life, but I see innocent people of Japan don't need another hero, but something different. So, I don't see why I shouldn't be that something. Izuku finished with an earnest smile. Eraserhead stared at the boy for a long time. Are you a threat to me or my charges? The children? No. Unless they grow to be unworthy heroes, I won't touch them. The tired man couldn't help but snort a laugh. You are a child, no older than them. His mind stuck to the latter part and thought of Bakugo and Todoroki. He would have to force them to change for their own good if Izuku wasn't captured soon. Izuku pursed his lips. I guess my age is. He stopped and sniffed the air. What is that smell? He frowned, having never smelled such an odor. Izawa froze and caught the scent Izuku spoke of. He turned his head from the boy to the dark sky and the glowing blue far in the distance. A fire. Just then, the communicator sounded in his ear. Eraserhead. We have villains. Return to the camp immediately. Mandalay shouted. Villains attacking children? Those are the rot that I speak of. Izawa was startled by how close Izuku was when he spoke. He was about to turn when he was picked up and flew over the trees at breakneck speeds towards the camp. He now knew how Izuku was able to move so quickly through the woods when Ragdoll was tracking him. Izawa turned in time to see the burning forest far in the distance. He cursed their luck and turned to where the camp was located. He witnessed Vlad King shield himself against a villain shooting blue flames. Vlad's blood shield was burning away quickly. He wouldn't have long. He activated his quirk just as Izuku slowed and dropped Izawa at a distance. Faster than he could see, Izuku rocketed towards the villain. He didn't get a chance to yell as the boy engaged. One moment the villain was whole and confused at his quirk stopping, and then his head disappeared in a splatter of brown. Izuku frowned at seeing the villain dissolve into a mud-like substance. He scanned the clearing for any more villains and found nothing. He didn't wait to talk to the new hero as he rose into the sky. When he was high above the camp, he observed what was going on. 2 heroes fought 2 villains with children nearby. 2 children fought another villain. Another hunted anyone who got close. One extruded some kind of purple gas that claimed many children already. He focused on the most dire situation. A big villain loomed over a small child. His anger rose at such a sight, and he shot off. It didn't take more than a second to arrive above the 2. He heard the villain begin to speak, but he didn't care to listen. He pulled one stone from his pocket that looked roughly like a tree and threw it with all his force at the villain. The stone shot through the air faster than most could see and hit center mass. The villain stumbled back and raised his hand to touch his chest, but failed halfway and fell onto his knees. He sat motionless in his death. He grabbed the small child and flew off to the camp. He dropped him off with Izawa, who was talking to the other hero. Here, take the child. There is more to save. He handed off the shivering child to Izawa, and without another word, he flew off. What is going on? Who is that? Vlad King whispered, shouted in an attempt to keep Kota from hearing. Izawa gritted his teeth. A vigilante is the best word for him. Izuku grabbed another stone and looked at it. He put it back. He liked how that stone glittered, so he settled on using other means. In most danger at the moment was the villain attacking the 2 children. He flew down at high speeds and grabbed the blonde villain with knives. She yelped and croaked as her throat was squeezed. She went limp in his grasp as his grip tightened even more and something snapped. He tossed the villain to the side without stopping his flight in the direction of the next villain. He flew high into the air and pushed himself at high speeds towards the villain with extending teeth. Feet first, he landed on the villain and slammed him into the earth. Ribs shattered, but the villain continued to try and attack. Izuku stomped on the villain's head, and it splattered in front of two children who were running from the villain. Glowing green eyes looked at the scared children. He turned his attention from them and flew off. His next target was some sort of monstrosity. It could not be human, or at least not anymore. Its brain was exposed and multiple arms extended on its back. Its skin was a teal blue, and it was chasing another pair of children. He landed before the thing and grabbed its chainsaw arm. He yanked the arm as he planted his foot on the creature's face. The limbs separated with a spray of vital fluid and a screech. He flipped the weapon in his hand and slammed it down into the creature's exposed brain. It fell with its head split open and twitching. He turned to leave when he caught a seam in the back of the creature that began to open. A familiar woman was exposed when Izuku began to pull at the opening. One of the cat hero team was captured. Izuku frowned but ignored any theories as he turned to the two children who were running from the creature. "Take this one with you. I still have others to save." Izuku gently laid the unconscious woman before the two terrified children. The girl tightened her shaking hands and approached the woman. She knelt to take stock of her as Izuku got up to leave. With a trembling voice, she asked, "You aren't a villain, are you?" Izuku turned his glowing green eyes on her, and she flinched. "I'm not a hero either," he said with a smile. He was beginning to like that phrase. The people could decide what he was. It did not matter to him. Tetsutestu and Kendo worked together to subdue the villain with the gas quirk. They got as close as they could without being seen, but bad luck came their way as Kendo stepped on a branch, and it cracked in the quiet. Tetsutestu acted quickly and used his quirk to shield Kendo while rushing at the villain, but the sudden sound of a gunshot startled the two. Tetsutestu wasn't hurt, but the bullet hitting his face shook him and caused him to stumble to the side. His foot slipped and Kendo was exposed. She stared in wide-eyed terror at the barrel of the gun. She began to grow her hands to shield her, but it took time for her hands to grow. A bullet was much faster. Someone grabbed the gun and crushed it. Kendo watched as the unknown person destroyed the gun and the hand that held it. The villain began to scream in pain, but a swift backhand caused a sicking crunch. The head of the villain spun far too much, and he crumpled. Izuku dropped the villain and looked at the gas. His eyes flickered to the two children, who backed away from him with pale faces. The boy shielded the girl with his body, but Izuku paid them no mind. They were safe. He knew it was a bad idea to experiment with his quirk at such a time, but he had a good opportunity. So, he breathed in the purple gas and hoped his quirk was what he thought it was. He began to get dizzy, so he floated high into the air to get fresh air. The effects died down, and then he lowered himself into the gas once more. Again, he got dizzy and repeated his actions. To his joy, the effects cleared up much faster. He did it once more and was ecstatic to find the gas taking longer to affect him. He grinned at finding another clue to his quirk or quirks. He moved on from his experiment to find the rest of the rot that plagued the forest. Once again, he flew high into the air. He spotted the two villains fighting against the two heroes. Near them, one child was unconscious while another dragged him back. The other child was also hurt, but to a lesser degree. He focused on the two villains and shot forward. His foot extended and connected with the lizard villain's chest. Something cracked, and the large sword amalgamation was let go. In a fluid motion, Izuku grabbed the thing that vaguely looked like a sword and spun with it to strike the other villain. It slammed just as much as it slashed the other villain in the back. The sword shattered into dozens of blades, and the villain crumpled with a shattered spine. With the hilt of the remaining sword, he slashed at the villain's exposed neck and severed it. He heard the other villain scream at seeing the villain die and moved to finish the other villain. With a sonic boom, he arrived before the lizard villain and plunged the weapon down his neck into his heart. He gurgled once and then died with his own weapon. Not looking at the horrified heroes, he rose high into the air. He scanned the thick woods and ignored the children able to run back to the camp. One child did catch his eyes as he ran perpendicular to the camp. He ran after a figure running to a clearing, where two villains waited. One villain was identical to the first one Hyuna lived, and the other was in a bodysuit. The last villain arrived and waved to the other two. He didn't wait any longer and shot forward with all speed. He slashed his open hand like a knife at the villain with the bodysuit just as a purple mist appeared in the clearing. The other two villains turned to see their comrade fall into two pieces with Izuku standing over him with a bloody hand. The villain with the hat and mask did not wait for an explanation as he ran to the purple mist. He disappeared into it, and the other villain turned to do the same with a wave of blue fire, but Izuku was faster. He dodged the fire and slammed his fist into the chest of the villain. Bones shattered, and the villain's chest caved in. He spat vital fluid and failed to breathe. He looked up at Izuku one last time before he died. Izuku turned from the dying villain to the purple mist. Just as he began to move towards it, the mist shrunk and disappeared. He flew to where the mist was and tried to see if there was anything left. He used one of his sticks. He still had to wave through the area where the mist was, but nothing happened. He frowned at having missed one villain. This attack was planned, but by who? As for why? Probably to cripple the next generation of heroes. Wouldn't be too much of a surprise. But why try to kidnap the hero? And what was that monstrosity? Izuku hummed to himself. He turned at hearing branches breaking. He saw the child who was running after the villain. He frowned at the child. Why were you chasing that villain? For glory? Or something else? Todoroki huffed in a breath and looked around frantically. He spotted the two dead villains and froze. His eyes turned to the boy no older than he was and took him in carefully. He was hovering a few inches off the ground. His shoes and hands were covered in vital fluid. Some splattered vital fluid covered his face, but what drew his eyes the most were the glowing green eyes. Not just because of the glow, but because of the resolve that lay in them. A mountain that would never erode or shake. Who are you? Where is the villain that took Bakugo? His eyes flickered to the dead villains and swallowed the bile that threatened to rise. The villain took a child? Izuku snarled in anger. He should have been faster to end them. I did not see them carrying anyone, but one escaped. The boy with red and white hair gripped his head with both hands and cursed. Make your way back to the camp. There are no threats left. Wait, who are you? You are not a hero. You are too young. Todoroki asked. I'm Izuku. And with a smile, he said the phrase he was beginning to like. I'm not a villain either. With all the threats neutralized, Izuku floated into the air and left to relocate the children who were affected by the gas. So, this was the end of part 2 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.